Why is everything
so expensive?
34% down for eggs is not solving the cost of living crisis.
Billionaires are lucky we want them taxed and not dead.
How bad the cost of living is right now.
The U.S. housing market just reached the most unaffordable level in U.S. history.
We're told inflation is cooling, but what are most people actually experiencing? Groceries, insurance, housing, rent, everything is up. Some things are way up, and something doesn't add up. Today we're looking at real-world experiences with the cost of living and what's actually behind it. Spoiler, there's a lot more to it than what most people and what most news outlets are saying.
34% down for eggs is not solving the cost of living crisis. When you look at housing, your property tax and homeowner insurance could be going up every year. Your maintenance costs are probably getting more expensive. In the same category, someone who's renting, they're spending $2,000 a month. You think they give a shit if eggs go from $3 to $2 and they save $1? Then you have parents, dual income parents who have to spend $1,000 to $1,500 per child on daycare. And you wonder why people are stressed. And then the big one is healthcare. Some people are spending $500 to $1,000.
Okay, maybe egg prices are down 34% year over year, but they had tripled or quadrupled in price. I will talk about that a little bit later. Couple comments you guys left on a recent video that I put out there. Government is doing nothing to fix the economy. Eat the rich. And one more, don't worry, that money's going to trickle down any moment now. In that video, the second commenter was commenting about, I talked about when trickle-down economics started, and there was just a huge diversion between wages and productivity. Most simply put, wages have not even come close to keeping up with the cost of living.
I'm about to show you two back-to-back clips of two different billionaires that on their own might not seem that bad, but once you listen to them one right after the other, they get a lot more evil.
If we could get the average American to start working a year earlier, right out of high school, or work a year later, not retire, it would generate about $3 trillion.
One side recommendation I have is don't worry about squirreling money away for retirement in 10 or 20 years. It won't matter. And if any of the things that we've said are true, saving for retirement will be irrelevant.
Do you guys see what they're doing? They're simultaneously telling Americans that we should be willing to work past retirement and that we don't need to worry about saving for retirement at all. He's telling you that because any worker who doesn't save for retirement is a worker that they can keep exploiting for rock bottom wages until that worker is 6 feet down.
One comment under this video has a great idea. Tax those wealthy folks at pre-Reagan rates. And that was before trickle-down economics really became popularized. Before that, the ultra-rich and probably the corporations too paid a lot more tax. One more comment, and it's from one of you. Corporations are taking everything from us. Who's doing anything about it? No one. Rise up, people. Demand change now before it's too late.
Billionaires are lucky we want them taxed and not dead. Companies act like they are angry they have to go through you to get your money, despite the fact that most of the big ones were subsidized with your tax dollars for them to exist in the first place. They're lucky we want their money and not their heads. Tax the rich is the most moderate stance you can have on the problem.
So I'm not going to hate on all billionaires or all corporations, but I would include corporations with the billionaires. And I'm not saying I agree with her entire message, but she makes some good points. I'm going to talk about some numbers momentarily, but there are a staggering number of people struggling to pay rent, pay for food. These are basic essentials for us to live. The mega rich, those running the corporations, they're not feeling any of this pain. That's why they create fake problems for us to fight over. I'm not fighting anyone because I'd rather build a new future with everyone. And I wish everybody thought like this, and there are major struggles, obviously, between the left and the right. I try not to get too political on this channel, and I just try to focus on the financial aspects of what's going on. But I did hear a very wise man recently say that it's not about the left versus the right. It's about the top versus the bottom.
I'm in the process of losing everything. My house, my car. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I lost my job at the end of September, and I haven't been able to find work. So I'm a couple months behind on my mortgage, and my car is probably 2 weeks away from getting repoed. I have no idea what to do.
I think a lot of people are in similar situations. And unfortunately, I feel like we're going to see it more and more. A lot of people are saying, oh, this guy didn't save enough. He looks like an older gentleman. He should have had a good emergency fund, some retirement savings. With the cost of living, it is just harder than ever to build that. One of you agree with me based on your comment after a recent video. You can have all the education you want, but look at all these college people who can't find a job, and a lot of older people too. And the bottom line is wages are not going up. So you can't save a damn thing to get ahead. By the time you get your check, it's gone. And maybe wages go up 2 or 3% per year, but that's not nearly as much as the cost of living, as housing, as food. So wages are essentially, if we talk in terms of purchasing power, wages are going down. There was another comment under the clip that we just saw. Someone said, sell your house, buy a van, and just live in that. And maybe that's not an option for that poor guy, but I'm going to show a little bit later on some people living alternative lifestyles, and they seem to be a lot happier than most of the people I see working full-time and trying to put a roof over their heads. Well, like a larger roof that isn't attached to wheels.
When oil prices go up, so does food and almost everything else that is shipped on a truck. So rising fuel prices and food prices again, when there are almost 9 million Americans out of work, when 60% of companies plan on laying off in the USA, is going to be catastrophic.
Inflation's at 3%. Okay, let's talk about that. So if we go back, let's go back 5-6 years. Prices are way up since then. I think everybody knows that. Everybody feels that. All of the essentials, a roof over our head and food in our belly. Now, why? It's not all just due to supply chain, printing money, but I'll touch on more of that later. I just wanted to look at some basics in the food department, because CPI is an average basket and includes things like electronics and apparel, so they skew the numbers. Anyway, let's just look at milk. Since 2019, it's up 40%. White bread is up 45%. Ground beef is up 50%, and eggs up 200%. That's 3 times what they were in 2019. Now they've fluctuated in everything and they're down from what they were a year ago, but they're still way more expensive than what they were in 2019. So that headline that, oh, eggs are down 34%, that's nice. But like, we have to look at the big picture here. They're still way more expensive than they used to be. And eggs and all this isn't even the biggest problem, because what is our largest expenditure? Most people, it's putting the roof over our heads, and that's a whole other problem that I'll talk about in a bit.
No one is buying anything anymore. Oh wait, sorry, not no one. Actually, half of all consumer spending for the first time in history is just the top 10% of American households. You know what that means? Our economy is literally held up by wealthy people because they are the only people who can afford to buy. Since the 1980s, billionaires' wealth has grown by 4,500%, while wages only grew by 15%. Rent went up 400%. College tuition went up 1,200%. Groceries went up 300%. So who's benefiting here?
Yeah, the wealthy, the ultra wealthy, the corporations, they're all doing just fine. If you look at the stock market, most stock markets around the world are near all-time highs. By the time you watch this video, they may have dipped because of what's going on in Iran. But why are they, or why were they near all-time highs? Because all of these companies, their numbers look really good. That's one big reason anyway. I mean, the stock market is super complicated. But the point is, the corporations, the mega rich, they're not feeling the cost of living crisis. Actually, they're maybe even doing better. Now, this TikTok account is clearly Gino, and he's got another really good clip I want to show in a second, but just wanted to read a comment from one of you because it's really appropriate right about now after what we just saw. The wealthy and powerful elite are possessed with a greed for money and lust for power which knows no bounds. It is astonishing. And I don't think it is just them. I think it's kind of like human nature, right? I think we've seen this throughout the existence of humanity. But in a lot of cases, I think they need that lust for power to get to the top. Not defending them, I just think that's the way it is.
How bad the cost of living is right now, our standards for what is a good product have never been lower. Those standards are in absolute hell right now. Like, I was in an Uber on the way over here, and it was like a pretty nice car. And I asked him, I was like, hey, I've never been in a car like this before. What brand is it? And he's like, well, they discontinued making it. So I got a pretty good price on it. And I was like, why did they discontinue making it? And he's like, well, there's a couple of finicky things. Like, for one thing, if it senses fire in the vehicle, then it automatically locks the doors. And I was like, well, that's not finicky. That is like a massive, like the biggest safety hazard you could possibly ever have. And he's like, yeah, I know, but I paid $18,000 for it. And I was like, well, that changes things.
So is the guy driving around with his windows down, or does he have like a little hammer to break the windows in case of a fire? Yeah, just ridiculous. Obviously, that is a really extreme example, but I totally agree. Like, if things are affordable these days, then they're probably not going to be very good quality. That includes food. A couple of the comments out of this video actually make really good points. You cannot even pay for quality. Quality isn't being offered. Another one, even quality and luxury are being cheapened for the sake of cutting costs and maximizing profit. That's a huge driver for a lot of these companies, right? Just lowering their costs to make their bottom line look better. I mean, that's been happening for a long time, but it's just so prevalent right now, and it just really feels like it's going on more now than maybe it ever has, or it has in a long time. But I wanted to bring up a really alarming stat based on a recent poll. 53% of adults say they can only afford basic necessities but struggle with larger costs like car payments or home ownership. That is most people only able to afford the basic necessity.
The U.S. housing market just reached the most unaffordable level in U.S. history. Worse than 2008, the median cost for a home now is $415,000. 5 years ago, the median cost for a home is $270,000. That's an increase of 54%. You need the household income to be $127,000 just to qualify for the mortgage. The median household income now in the U.S. is $80,000.
I mentioned it before, the housing costs in Canada, for those of you in the US, if you want to feel any better. At the end of 2025, the non-seasonally adjusted national average home price was about $673,000 to $678,000. Now those are Canadian dollars, but still well above that $410,000 or $415,000 US for the median home price. But for my fellow Canadians and my American friends, let's all feel better about the way our housing market has gone by watching another country.
If you feel like everything in life is just getting more and more expensive, you're not imagining it, and the data backs it up. So living costs over the last 12 months are up 4.2%, housing costs jumped 5.5%, electricity has surged 21.5%, and beef and lamb are up over 10% in Australia. And then layer on that the property market has done almost a 5x since 2000. It's gone from a median price of $200,000 nationally to close to $1 million.
25 years, housing went up 5x. So let's circle back to North America and talk about the US housing market and how things have changed since 2019. We're not talking about a 5x change here, but we're also not talking about 25 years. We're talking about just 6 years. The median home price in the US has gone up 56% since 2019. And that's just on average. Of course, in certain places, it's gone up a lot more than that. But that affects rents too, right? They have a symbiotic relationship, housing costs and rent prices. So of course, people are struggling to pay rent. And budget rules are actually changing amongst financial advisors. It used to be the 50-30-20 model. Now it's 60-30-10. So that's robbing from the savings, which used to be 20%, put that into savings. Now it's just 10% because financial advisors are realizing what's going on and people just can't afford to save more. Even 10% is a huge stretch for a lot of people. And a lot of this has been kind of anecdotal, but if we look at the data, nearly half, 49% of renters are cost burdened, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income just to put the roof over their head. And about 1 in 4 renters spends more than 50% to not get rained on. That leaves very little for food, entertainment, savings, or, enjoyment, because heaven forbid we should enjoy ourselves. So this next video is super eye-opening. This woman has a receipt from 97, so 29 years ago. The change in cost, this is just food. Some of the changes are just nuts.
So I'm gonna find out what all of this would cost today. Little Debbie's brownies, we all know what those are. Those were $1.09. They are now $5.75. Coffee used to be $2.47. It is now, for like a bag of ground coffee, it is $9.43. So the State Fair classic corn dogs used to be $2.49 for like a pack of 22. Now they're $14.30. So for 122 items at H-E-B in 1997, that costs $155. In 2026, 122 items cost $504.
So the equivalent of $155.97 should be about $300 now, something like that. But $500 is clearly way more. It's more than triple. And a huge contributor to that, of course, is just the food price change just in the last 6 years. Now, inevitably, when I make videos about the cost of living, I always see comments like this. People gonna start waking up to the money printing, or is everybody gonna stand around looking stupid? And of course, when any country prints too much money, then that money is going to be devalued and they will probably have some inflation. But if you think that's the only thing that's going on here, I'm going to get into some of the other reasons why everything has gotten so much more expensive in a minute or two here. One more comment, because it gets at more of what I'm talking about, some of the other contributors, what I feel are the main contributors to the insane cost of living. I'll just read the first half. How did we get to where we are at today? We allowed rich folks to systematically overcharge us for everything of real value and put us in debt to them. And so I wouldn't necessarily say rich folks, I would say corporations. And of course, they spend tons of money on lobbying the government. They basically get more of a say in terms of policy than the average citizen, at least from the way I see it. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and I'll get into a little bit more contributors for the crazy cost of living momentarily. Okay, first, I actually wanted to mention one more thing related to groceries, but also putting a roof over our heads. It's from some recent research related to how closely food insecurity and housing insecurity overlap, even among people who are gainfully employed. For example, studies focusing on care workers in places like New York State. It's a pretty wealthy state, I think everyone would agree with that, including home health aides, nursing assistants, and other frontline healthcare workers, have found that more than 60% report experiencing either food insecurity, housing insecurity, or both. These are care workers. These are essential. They're probably as essential, I think, as food and putting the roof over our heads, right? And more than half, well over half, are feeling this insecurity. Now, this next one is from, I believe it's the UK. It's certainly not North America, but it really paints a picture of what's going on with small business, and it is absolutely applicable to what's going on here.
I want you to listen to this. This isn't some abstract story about the economy. This farm shop is 2 miles from my house. I know this place. People take their kids there. People work there. And they've just announced they're closing their farm shop. Listen to what he says.
Our beloved farm shop here at Kefim Farm is having to close. The reason for that is the trading and business conditions in this country at the moment is unbearable.
Unbearable. That's not a buzzword. That's someone who's done the sums, looked at the books and realised opening the doors actually costs him money. That's the bit people don't hear enough.
Yeah, small companies just cannot compete with the corporations anymore. I do go to some small farms around where we live, and sure, everything is more expensive there. I do feel better eating the food. I feel like it's better for us, but it's way more expensive. Of course, they can't compete with the larger corporations. Now, that's normal. That's normal because the larger the company, they're going to have more purchasing power, more leverage with suppliers, right? But I talked about on a recent video something, just an example of what's going on out there, and I think is way more prevalent than what we even have proof of. But Walmart and Pepsi were involved in this multi-year investigation where Pepsi was monitoring Walmart's customers, letting Walmart know when anyone had any prices lower than Walmart, and instead of Walmart doing what the competition thing is supposed to do, which is lower their prices, Pepsi would go and raise their prices to Walmart's competitors. Now, if Walmart and Pepsi are doing this, I think it's pretty reasonable to think that Walmart and other companies, their other suppliers, are doing this, and that's why one of the big reasons why Walmart has the lowest prices. Walmart's not lowering their prices to compete, and it's pretty obvious if we look around and just see how prices have been changing in recent memory. If there was actual, real, legitimate, honest competition, we wouldn't be seeing the prices that we are seeing now. But that's just one example related to groceries. And by the way, those charges were dropped. I won't get into how they were dropped, but I do have some more facts and figures to go over, and another alarming situation going on that is an absolute contributor to why rent is so high in the US.
The United States is insanely expensive. And why? Why are we the 9th most expensive country in the world? What are we paying for? My number to just survive is $4,500 a month. A month. That's a baseline, by the way. That's the bare minimum. Between housing, healthcare, groceries, everything is priced at a premium, but it doesn't really feel premium. Of course, there's a cost of living crisis around the world. I just feel like the one right now in the United States is just undoable for young people.
It's undoable for a lot of older people as well, like I've covered before in previous cost of living videos, and how it relates to retirement, or should I say how it has eliminated retirement in a lot of cases. And I am going to cover some alternative ways of living on the cheap momentarily. But he talked about housing, and I want to talk about rent. There should be a symbiotic relationship between rent and housing prices. When people can't afford to buy a house, then they rent, and landlords have to pay the mortgage, so then they're going to want to demand a rent that is going to help cover that. So of course, housing has gone up. You would think rent would go up in proportion to housing, but it hasn't. Rent's gone up even more, and one of the reasons is a company called RealPage. Many renters probably haven't heard of it, but it's a company that sells software to landlords to help them decide what to charge. Right now, they're being sued by the US Department of Justice, along with several states and private renters who claim that the software helps landlords use shared data to keep rents higher instead of truly competing with each other. Critics say when software is designed to maximize rent prices rather than simply fill vacancies, rent can stay high even when apartments are available, which makes sense. The bigger concern here is that algorithms can influence the price of something, can artificially inflate the price of something as essential as housing. Is it doing that with groceries? I would say probably yes. At least I've seen evidence where it's helping competitors collude and raise prices. I mean, we don't have that many competitors anymore anyway, which is another issue. Another comment from you, very applicable to show right now, about how the middle class is basically being decimated. Truthfully, they weren't middle class. They were living off credit cards and loans, living beyond their means. I agree in a lot of cases. I think that's happening less these days because people really can't afford to do that. But they left themselves no wiggle room for inflation. We need that wiggle room for emergencies, for our retirement. We have to get more and more wiggle room, aka a larger and larger nest egg, towards retirement. Again, easy for me to say, but I just have to say it.
What is happening? What the heck? How can they even justify this? Like, this is absolutely outrageous. Our electric bill for 1 month is $1,300. It's unbelievable. I just had somebody in one of the Facebook groups here in the county just post their bill is over $2,000. This is somebody on a fixed income. This is unbelievable. There is no help. They're going to say, oh, we can set up a payment plan. We can't afford to pay it. The payment plan doesn't change it. People are having to decide between paying their rent or their mortgage, paying their electric bill, and getting groceries.
Okay, I had to look into this one. Unbelievable. Yeah, I'm having a hard time believing that. So, fact check time. Let's see what I can find out here. Okay, so there are a lot of reports about this. Baltimore Gas and Electric. Apparently, bills have been jumping sharply, even when energy usage hasn't changed that much. A lot of the frustration is because delivery charges and fees are rising faster than actual electricity costs. Now, she mentioned that she's on well water, so I'm assuming she's out in the country, and so it's probably the delivery. So delivery includes the cost of maintaining wires, substations, and all the grid infrastructure, all the stuff between the power station and where she's living. So people living in suburbs probably haven't seen the sharp rises that she's seen. At least I'm hoping they haven't. And of course, it's a regulated utility. They just have, these corporations have more power than we do. So this is one of the things that happens. It's not just happening in Baltimore. It's not just happening in the US or Canada. It's happening in a lot of places and contributing to the crazy cost of living.
What does the rising cost of living, electricity prices, and childcare all have in common? The answer? Privatization. But there's two that I really wanted to focus on because I think they provide the most useful demonstration of exactly why we need to start bringing essential services back into public hands. And let's start with childcare and the electricity system. You know, one of the biggest private electricity retailers, AGL, made $755 in profit per customer last year. In fact, last year, AGL increased their profits by 189%. This is at the same time as electricity prices were skyrocketing. And where is all that money going? Into the profit margins of massive private multinational corporations.
So just some examples, and I mean, this cost of living issues happening in a lot of these first world countries. And how expensive is daycare, right? It's just insane. They're doing something about it in Canada. It's different depending on where you live, but it is just such a burden. And even for people who don't have kids, for single people, for instance, life has never been more expensive, as many people already know. It's almost impossible to get a decent place to live as a single person in this day and age, unless you already have a ton of money. There's something I'm seeing called the singles tax. Estimates suggest living alone can cost about $10,000 more per year than sharing expenses, adding up to nearly $1 million over a lifetime. So let's stay on utilities, but bring it back to the US for this one.
This is my gas bill from Fuel Georgia. I'm sorry, I know it's backwards. Let me just tell you what it says. It says $579.77. Excuse me, what? I bought this house just about a year ago. Every other bill has been about $80 to $120. What was that again? $579.70. I don't even,
So another example, private companies, and in Georgia, it's actually not a regulated industry. Gas. So one company, Atlanta Gaslight, delivers the gas, and then private marketers sell the gas to customers so they can just raise the prices as much as they want. Think the prices are going to climb higher than wages? Yeah. And I get it, people want less government. I get it because government is so inefficient, but at least they can stick up for us. At least I would think they would stick up for us more than these private companies. So many people are feeling the pain. I know some of you are. Comment from one of you: make more than I ever made, and I am more broke than when I made $55,000 a year. Broke AF. We are in a recession. They're not calling it that because the wealthy are doing so well, I guess, but most people are feeling like it.
I would like to know, because everybody who I know, everybody who I meet seem to be doing worse. Maybe it's a Florida thing. But I'm telling y'all that it's not getting no better. It's only getting worse. It's only been getting worse over this past year. Within 1 year in Florida, the car insurance went up, the home insurance went up, the property taxes went up, the food went up, everything went up.
It's not just him, it's not just Florida, it's happening in a ton of places. If we get back to the most expensive thing, which is putting a roof over our heads, national research shows that housing costs are so high that even full-time workers often earn too little to afford modest rentals without being cost burdened. That is a serious problem. Is there any question why on any given night there are more than 500,000 Americans experiencing homelessness? Is it any surprise people are leaving the US? People are leaving a lot of first world countries just to find a place where the cost of living makes sense?
United States citizens are leaving the US and going to other countries. Whether it's Ghana, whether it's Thailand, you're starting to see it more and more. People are pretty much giving up on the American dream. And what I've personally seen from the videos is everybody's happy. And at the end of the day, that's what you want to be. You want to be happy. You don't want to be somewhere where you're miserable, you're struggling. But we really I think this is something we got to start talking about. People will come to America because America was what they would say the American dream. And I think the American dream is now turned into the American nightmare. And when you look at these other countries, you'll see that, man, the places are beautiful. They have the same thing, if not more. The prices split in half, probably less than split in half.
America, Canada used to be seen as really great places to live, right? Not anymore. People are leaving, like I spoke to earlier. A lot of people going to alternative lifestyles as well. So let's check out a few examples.
Why I chose van life? Well, the main reason is I live in a van because I want freedom, you know? I want to be free. I want to escape the system as much as possible. And another reason is to escape the cost of living crisis in the UK. It's just not good. It really isn't. So many people are living paycheck to paycheck and they're not happy, and I want to be happy, and living like this makes me so happy. It really, like, it fills my heart and soul. Do you know what I mean? Like, I am living my best life and I'm so grateful for that. And living like this has just given me the opportunity to go to Africa. I've just travelled to Morocco. I drove through France and Spain, which was just an epic trip. And all the cool people I met along the way as well, all the great souls. It's a great life to live. And I get to wake up to views like this. I'm so grateful.
So this is one option. He makes it seem pretty appealing. Certainly not for everyone. I don't think my wife would be into that, even if we got like a really nice RV. But then where do you park it? I have seen crackdowns in the US, people living in cars and their cars getting towed and then they have nowhere to live, or they have to pay for it to get out of the impound. But I feel really stupid sometimes. You know, later in life, finally starting a family. And so we got a bigger house. And so I have this huge mortgage and I feel kind of stupid sometimes. Like maybe we should have done something like this, or at least lived in a small house, or well, maybe something that this next person describes.
Everyone's complaining about the cost of living, but no one is actually doing this. A block of land, a tiny home, that could be the way and the future of affordable living. Everyone's noticing a huge shift in the housing market, but no one's doing anything about it. We're not doing it because of the cost of living crisis. We're doing it because it is the smartest move for our family.
If you do have a bit of money and you don't want to buy a van or an RV and live in that, then maybe a tiny home on a plot of land. I mean, you have to live out in the country, but hey, there's worse ways to live. Another option comes in the form of a comment from one of you. Become a CNA or elder caregiver. You can live in with someone. And so then you've obviously got the roof over your head. I don't know how long it takes to get accreditation to become whatever the CNA is or elder caregiver, but it just seemed like an interesting idea I thought I would throw out there. Another comment from one of you kind of looks at the big picture. Your biggest problem is you don't get to live comfortably in the beginning. I think the main problem with young people is the fact that they thought college time with all their travel, yes, they traveled, well, some people, but anyway, studying abroad, etc., that's not the real life, and it's slapping them in the face and they don't know how to deal with it. Whether you're married, have kids, single, doesn't matter. No, I noticed in the comments, people who seem to be doing well on low salaries understood real life, not fake life. That's a part of it. A lot of people feel like it's an overspending thing, but ultimately, like what I take from this comment and my thoughts are that people they really have to sacrifice now more than ever. And it's easy for me to say I'm sacrificing a little bit. Other people have to sacrifice a lot more. But ultimately, how do we get change? It's realizing what's actually going on. And like I said before, my thoughts, it's not a left versus right thing. It's a top versus bottom thing. And we really have to convey this to the people who are running our governments, whatever country that we're living in. Let's look at one more guy living an alternative lifestyle. I talked about the RV before. Let's have a look. So this guy lives for about 280 pounds per month. It's kind of equivalent to dollars, just like on a high level. Now, money up front, he did spend about 20 grand on the RV, but then he can live super cheaply. And as you can see, he can be by water. He can be out in nature. It does seem a lot better to me than really struggling. I mean, if you have to have a job where you live near a city, then obviously this wouldn't really work out very well. But maybe if you can work from home or work from your RV, it might be a solution. Ultimately, I think people just now probably more than ever have to think like outside the box. I shouldn't say now more than ever. I should say now that more than in a long time. Of course, like 100, 200 years ago, things were a lot different and people had to sacrifice a lot more in a lot of cases back then. So we can't forget about that. And I think we kind of have to put everything into perspective. But definitely, yeah, thinking outside the box, just not doing what all of our friends are doing, definitely not doing what we're seeing on social media, and not falling prey to the corporations trying to sell us stuff all the time. If you're not subscribed, I put out videos like this on a regular basis. Let me know down in the comments what's going on in your life with the cost of living. How are you dealing with it? Any ideas? Would love to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.